Welcome to Grace Point.
We are a progressive Christian church,
loving our community by gathering in our homes.
Even as we practice social distancing,
we're asking big questions about what it means to be human,
what it means to love our neighbors,
and what it means to follow Christ.
We're cultivating a safe virtual space to deconstruct or reconstruct,
to question and to grow.
We are welcoming, affirming, and fully inclusive.
Because who you are and who you love are celebrated here.
While we may be physically apart from one another,
we believe we're never truly alone.
You are never alone.
We're together in this.
We're together in this. So even though we can't give you a hug just yet,
we want you to know that you are beloved,
you are included,
and you are affirmed.
Welcome to Grace Point.
Welcome to Grace Point.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
I lift my eyes up to the hills. This my morning song, where my strength comes from. I lift my eyes up to the hills. This my evening song, where my help comes This is the gravity of love. Just as the moon follows the sun, you're all around me. You're holding everything. This is the hope of every land. Just as the universe expands, your love is reaching. You're holding everything. We lift our eyes up to the hills. When will our help come? Lord, we cry, how long? We lift our eyes up to the hills. Even as we run, hope is chasing us. This is the gravity of love. Just as the moon follows the sun, you're all around me. You're holding everything. Just as the hope of every land. Just as the universe expands, your love is reaching. You're holding everything. This is the gravity of love. Just as the moon follows the sun, you're all around me. You're holding everything. This is the hope of every land. Just as the universe expands, your love is reaching. You're holding everything.
Good morning, GP kids, GP youth, and GP grown-ups. I hope each of you is doing really well. I encourage you to spend time connecting with your GP community this week. GP kids, you hang out with your GPK pals every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Zoom. For hangout information, check out our Instagram at GracePointKidsTN. GP Youth, you hang out every Friday at 6:30 p.m. and every Sunday morning at 10:45 a.m. on Discord. This is where you connect throughout the week, and this is also where you find your weekly discussion guides. For Discord info, check out our Instagram at GracePointYouthTN. Gamers, you also hang out on our new GPYK Minecraft server. For instructions on how to join the server, take a peek at your weekly Sunday email. If you'd like to join the email list, email me at lisa@gracepoint.net. This Thursday is the Thanksgiving national holiday. Many of us want Thanksgiving to be a celebration of gratitude, generosity, and connection to the land. A holiday of celebrating diversity and togetherness, and an honest history lesson and time of reverence. A time of teaching our children to know and to respect the people who stewarded this land before us, who are still here and are yet to come. But how do we do that? This week we look to resources from Raising Luminaries to assist us with understanding and navigating the fourth Thursday of November. You can access our GP Kids Bitmoji gathering space, our principal guide, and all that is being created for and shared with you in our Facebook groups, Instagram accounts, and your email inbox. All right, peace out, big air hugs, and so much love to each and every one of you.
Good morning, Grace Point. My name is Chris Christian. I'm super excited to be bringing you your announcements this Sunday. So we are in our new series. It's called Let Us Be. It's all about embodying our values. So that's a lot of fun. Can't wait to dive in this morning. I want to send a welcome out to everyone joining us here in Nashville, all over the U.S. and abroad. We're so happy that you've chosen to spend time with us this Sunday, and we welcome you into our community. If you haven't signed up yet for our weekly newsletter, please go to gracepoint.net/subscribe to get weekly updates on what's happening in the community. On Sundays, we typically meet at 10:30 on YouTube, just 15 minutes early, give you a chance to catch up with everybody, chat, and see what's new in everyone's life. So please feel free to join us next Sunday, 15 minutes early if you would like to. Also on Wednesdays, we do Reconstruct. Now, Reconstruct is an incredible opportunity to connect with people right here in our community and talk about the issues at hand, talk about what's happening in life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty. We just join, and you can come as you are and be welcomed into that space. Something exciting. We are starting communion the first week of Advent, which is November 28th. We're starting. Please feel free to join us and use whatever elements you have. Since we're socially distanced, you can use bread and wine, or you can use crackers and water. Whatever you want, whatever you have, please feel free to join us for Advent. Last but not least, there are 2 different ways to give. Your contributions matter so much here at Grace Point. It helps us to function. The first way is the way my family gives, and we text Grace Point with an E to 77977, or you can go to the website and give. So either way works. So thank you so much for being here. We're super excited to dive in. Welcome to Grace Point.
Oh, how high would I climb mountains if the mountains were where you hide? Oh, how far I'd scale the valleys if you graced the other side. Oh, how long have I chased rivers from lowly seas to where they rise, against the rush of grace descending from the source of its supply. In the highlands and the heartache, you're neither more or less inclined. I would search and stop at nothing. You're just not that hard to find. So I will find you on the mountain. I will find you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. I will find you in the valleys all the same. No less good within the shadows. No less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, how far beneath your glory does your kindness extend the path from where your feet rest on the sunrise to where you sweep away my past. Oh, how fast will you come running if just to shadow me through the night? Trace my steps through any failure and walk me out the other side. For who could dare ascend that mountain, that valleyed hill called Calvary, but for the one I call Good Shepherd, who died for love upon a tree. I will find you on the mountain. I will find you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will find you in the valleys all the same. No less good within the shadows. love can move mountains wherever I stand. And if ever I walk through the valley of death, I'll sing through the shadows my song of ascent. Whatever I walk through, wherever I am, your love can move mountains wherever I stand. And if ever I walk through the valley of death, I'll sing through the shadows my song of ascent. From the gravest of all valleys come the pastures we call grace, a mighty river flowing upwards from a deep but empty grave. I will find you on the mountain, and I will find you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will find you in the valleys all the same. No less good within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is, in the highlands and the heartache all the same.
Hey there, Grace Point. It is my delight today to introduce to you our guest speaker, Dr. Diana Butler Bass. She's the award-winning writer of over 10 books, one of which was entitled Grounded, that we read this year for Books and Brews, and she joined us for that conversation. It was such a meaningful and substantive conversation, and I so enjoyed it. She has written in so many different online publications. She is a scholar, having graduated with a PhD in religious studies from Duke University. She also studies American history, religion, and culture. Just a phenomenal, brilliant mind. And I'm so excited that we get to hear from her today. So, please join me in welcoming Dr. Diana Butler Bass.
Hi, it's good to be with you on this last Sunday in the Christian year, the last Sunday before the first Sunday of Advent, which marks the end of the Christian year, and then Advent, the beginning of a new Christian year. And here in the United States, it's also the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And so my task today, what your pastor asked me to talk about, is gratitude. And oh my gosh, I could talk about gratitude forever. And it's not really because I'm a naturally grateful person, but instead it's because a few years ago I embarked on this really interesting project where I wanted to write a book about gratitude, mostly because I didn't know a whole lot about gratitude. People said that it was good for you. You know, I watched plenty of Oprah or read magazine, newspaper articles that talked about how gratitude was good. And I always thought it was intriguing, you know, keeping a gratitude journal, trying to develop some sort of attitude of thankfulness that people said, you know, just makes one's life better. And so, interestingly enough, I started writing a book that was eventually called Grateful, and was working on that book most of 2016 and early 2017. And so that meant that I was writing a book about gratitude during the last presidential election, not the one we've just been through, but the one before. And that was a pretty difficult time to write a book about gratitude because I wasn't feeling very grateful about what was going on in the country. I was worried about increasing incidents of racism. I was certainly worried about attitudes that I was seeing in political campaigns. I was worried about the outcome of that last election. And so it was weird to write a book about gratitude while there was so little in the world for which I was feeling grateful. And I have to tell you that it's been pretty much the same for the last 4 years. Is that the book indeed was written It was published in early 2018. And all during 2018 and 2019 and this year as well, I have talked to thousands of people about feeling grateful in difficult times. And nothing has been more difficult than this year. You know, how do we feel grateful? How do we feel grateful this Thanksgiving when probably most of you, I assume, are going to make good decisions about small gatherings and not traveling, protecting your families and your communities from the potential of being infected with COVID. Certainly, we've had huge financial losses this year, uncertainty related to the virus, the grueling political campaign with all of its ups and downs, and it's still not entirely resolved. We think we have a president-elect, but every day you turn on the news and there's something unanticipated. And so literally, I think all of us feel our lives have been turned inside out and upside down and backwards this year. And we might be going into Thanksgiving saying, no, thank you. Oddly enough, that was going to be the title of my book. I wanted to call the book No Thanks, because that's what I felt like I had, was no capacity to say thank you. And yet, it was in the writing of the book and in that difficult time 4 years ago that I actually learned the importance of gratitude. And I want to share with you just a little bit about that today, in hopes that I can clear the air a little bit for you. Is that gratitude is really two things. Gratitude is a feeling, and it's a feeling that comes up naturally when you receive a gift. That's what gratitude basically is. Someone gives you something, or you see something beautiful that's a surprise and unexpected. And in response, you have these feelings of appreciation, wonder. It's sort of like, me? You're giving me a gift? Those kinds of feelings, that's what we call gratitude. And gratitude is what psychologists and people who study gratitude in philosophy, medical doctors, researchers, gratitude is a set of complex feelings. It's not one thing. In many ways, gratitude is like love. How can you really explain love? When you feel it. And gratitude is the same way. So it's not like, happiness. We all kind of know what happiness is. Or grief. That's a complex thing, but we also know what it looks like or what it feels like. But gratitude involves a lot of different feelings. But yet when it arrives as a feeling, we know it. Oh, thank you. And, it's a humbling kind of feeling too. And so gratitude is a feeling. And it's situationally dependent in that way. You have to be able to understand that you're getting a gift in order to feel grateful. And so that's why gratitude's been so difficult this year, is that we have not felt like we were getting gifts. Indeed, most of us have felt like, oh my gosh, 2020, go away, at one horrible thing after another. Tonight there was actually a thing on Twitter about how the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, a bunch of branches broke off of it when they tried to put it up this morning. And people were saying, oh my gosh, just another 2020 thing. Even the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center can't even give us joy because the branches break off. And that's the way we felt this year. It's been very hard to find gratitude as a feeling. But gratitude is something else as well. And that is, gratitude is what I call in the book an ethic. it's a set of practices or a virtue. It's a way of being in the world. And when I was writing Grateful, it was fascinating to me that so many of the books that you can go into Barnes and Noble and buy, so many of those books are about gratitude as a feeling. How we can increase gratitude as a feeling in our life, how those feelings are good for us, and they are good for us. They're good for our hearts. They're good for our mental states. They help to, when you feel grateful, it helps to alleviate depression, anxiety, fear, all kinds of stuff. So the feelings of gratitude are great. But what happens when you live in a year like 2020, and you get to Thanksgiving, and all you want to say is, no thanks. Let's send this year back to the maker. Well, that's when we have to lean towards the other direction. Is that gratitude is also a way of being in the world. That it is a moral choice that we make. Now, it's a little harder to explain that because as we all know that gratitude is a feeling. And we know that when, we experience it, we have all gotten gifts. We've all known those kinds of feelings. But what does it mean when we say that gratitude is a moral choice? Well, it's interesting because gratitude is caught up into the ways which we structure our lives. There are people who actually don't like gratitude. And I remember when I was just on the road, my book had just been published. And I'm friends with another writer whose work I'm sure you know, Glennon Doyle. And she's married to Abby Wambach. And as I was talking about my book on gratitude, Abby, it just so happened, gave a speech, graduation speech. It made it all over the internet. And she was saying how negative gratitude was. And her speech was essentially that, here she's a world-class soccer player, and everybody kept telling her and the other women on their team, their, Olympic winning team, that they should be grateful. And there was all this stuff about how they should be grateful to the Olympic Sports Committee, or grateful to their fans, or grateful to this group, or grateful to the people who support them financially, and all this kind of stuff. And that they sort of owed gratitude to all these different people who supported them. And Abby made the point that, well, hey, not really. Women don't owe gratitude to anybody for opening up a sport to them. Because the women were gifted and talented and athletic and strong and worked hard for all of this. And it wasn't an issue of gratitude. No one handed them a gift. As a matter of fact, sports had kept women out. And so to say we should be grateful to the, World Olympic Committee for putting women's soccer in this place, whatever. No, it's not about gratitude. It's about claiming one's space and standing on one's achievements. And I read that speech, and I just thought to myself, I really understand what she's saying, and I really like, Glennon and Abby so very much. Very generous and amazing people. And yet I couldn't help but thinking that she had gotten gratitude wrong. And it's not because Abby is not smart, because she's a very smart person, but the reason she got it wrong is because our culture gets it wrong. Our culture has taught us that gratitude is a sort of a transaction. That if you achieve something, or if you're given something, in the case that Abby was talking about, it was like they were given the chance as women to play this sport. If you're given something, well, then you owe the people who gave it to you a debt of gratitude. And until you discharge that debt, you're somehow considered to be less than completely moral person. And I think that Abby was making a really good point. And she was saying, no, that's just wrong. I don't owe you anything for being a strong woman. who use my gifts to achieve this remarkable thing with my team. And I don't have to thank you. And please don't tell me I do. And what she was pointing to wasn't that gratitude was such a bad thing, but she was pointing out what is a problem in our culture, and that is what I call corrupted gratitude. And you see, what that kind of gratitude is a kind of gratitude that's structured into the moral sort of expectations that we have of one another in a society. That there are gifts that move around, and that people who are benefactors are owed debts of gratitude when they do something for people who they perceive needed the gift. And so it's not just like Abby and the women's Olympic team, but this is also really a problem with church stewardship campaigns, and also things that happen in our culture around Thanksgiving and Christmas, is that we ask people to give money to something and, give gifts to the poor. And then we really do have this attitude in our culture that the poor will thank us. That if we, help out at the homeless shelter, maybe some person who comes in from the cold will say thank you. And that they'll appreciate the work that we've done. That benefactors deserve thanks. But that is all fine and good. It's nice to be polite, write thank you notes, or express appreciation when people work hard on behalf of those who have less. But what has happened in all these situations is that we've structured gifts as if they belong to benefactors who are above beneficiaries, the people who get gifts. And in this kind of vision, this moral vision of gratitude, when a benefactor gives something to a beneficiary, the beneficiary has to return thanks to the benefactor. So it's a transaction. It's to use a Latin phrase, a quid pro quo. Benefactors do have tendencies to give in order to get something. There are rare stories. There was one recently in the news of a very rich man who gave away actually more money than any other person in human history. And he gave it away all anonymously because he didn't ever want anybody to be caught up into this structure of needing to thank him for the gifts that he had given. He didn't want anyone to know that he had given the gifts. Partly because he didn't really feel like they were his to give. He literally understood his whole life as being a gift, and that he had been truly blessed, and he literally gave away almost everything he owned. Now, in these last years of his life, he lives in an apartment in San Francisco with his wife, and they have just enough to live on, after making billions of dollars and giving it all away. And so what this points to is that we actually do have this moral structure of gratitude in the world that we live around. And it's a moral structure that makes demands on us. It's why when I was growing up, my grandmother, who went through the Great Depression, I guess I get to tell my grandchildren now that I went through this thing, this COVID and depression thing. But I remember her talking about the depression, and she would talk about how she, had to be in bread lines, and her family almost starved. And she would say, I never want a gift because I never want to have to say thank you to anyone. And she looked at gratitude and gifts in a very negative way, because they had been used against her in a time of incredible need. She'd been the recipient of an immoral form of gratitude and demand. You owe me a debt of gratitude if I give you that loaf of bread. And that's what needs to change. And that's actually where, on this moral sense, that my life has been changed by gratitude in the last 4 years is because as I explored the scriptures and as I wrote this book my book on gratitude, I discovered that one of the major theological themes of scripture is indeed about gifts and generosity and gratitude. The story of the God of the Bible is a story of a God who creates, who gives us the gift of life, who gives the gift of life to the whole of the cosmos and breathes into existence everything that will ever be needed. That God is the giver who gives in the first of creation and continues to give, that we live in a gifted universe. And that God structures the created order in Genesis around those gifts. He tells the first couple, Adam and Eve, the beautiful poetry that we have there in Genesis, tells the man and the woman, you're surrounded by gifts, take care of them. Watch over them. Increase their benefit. Go and spread the gifts. And, we messed that up. But that's the vision. It's a gift of creation where we as human beings are given a gifted universe to care for and to till and keep, to make sure that it keeps producing the gifts that God intends. And so even though that vocation becomes tainted with sin, it is still there to multiply the good gifts of creation, to spread them around, to share them, to make sure that everyone is fed, that the garden flourishes. And so we get the laws and the prophets and all the wonderful stories of the Hebrew scriptures, and we have a vision throughout the scripture of a God who continues to give gifts. Manna in the wilderness, setting a table in the wilderness when you can't even imagine there's anything that can be fed. Even when the Israelites are in exile or when their hopes are dashed, God is still with them, giving them gifts of compassion, of hope, gifts of one another, gifts of community, gifts of a dream of a kingdom that will come one day, and that the whole order of the world will be restored as it should be. A universe of free flowing gifts where there is no oppression, where there is no corruption, where there is no quid pro quo, where there is no Caesar lording it over you, where there are no demands of gratitude, where there's nobody saying you can't have this loaf of bread unless you say thank you. But instead, the bread is there for all. The gifts of every person to be celebrated. There are no boundaries to your strengths being exercised, the gifts that you have to give the world, given fully without anyone saying no. That is the dream of God throughout the whole of the Hebrew scriptures, and it is the dream that Jesus talks about all through his ministry. Jesus dreams that age to come, that time when gifts will flow freely, when we live in a universe that is just graced, will become obvious and evident to every single creature that lives. And that we will know that grace so deeply and so richly that it will transform our lives and transform our communities and transform even our politics and our economic systems, so that when you get the giving of the Holy Spirit in the book of Acts, what you get people who share all things, who know that nothing belongs to them, but instead that it is all God's gift, and that everyone is invited to the table. It's a moral vision. Gratitude in the Bible is a moral vision where the two systems of gratitude are constantly contrasted. The system of Caesars and pharaohs, that is a system of gratitude that demands something when gifts are given, that always is saying to beneficiaries, I am the benefactor. You owe me a debt of gratitude. And to that, God just laughs. Because God knows that there is no such thing as a Caesar who is a benefactor or a Pharaoh who is a benefactor. It just doesn't work that way. Because Caesar was given gifts just like the poorest peasant in the Mediterranean world. And Caesar would not be alive without the God who breathed life into the universe. That Caesar's life, just like your life, just like my life, just like everyone's life, is a gift. And that we can never be benefactors unless we are first recipients. And we are all recipients. There is not one of us who gives without first having received. Sorry, Mom, who taught me it was more blessed to give than to receive. But the truth is that none of us can give without receiving. And that's the nature of things. And with God's giftedness, there are no demands. It's really what we call grace. Free gifts. Free gifts. The Protestant reformers said that grace was the most radical doctrine in the whole of the scriptures. And it was one that the church most easily forgot. They weren't kidding. God's gifts are free. No strings attached. There's nothing that you can do to earn any of them. What do we do with free gifts? What do we do with free gifts? We keep trying to say, no, it can't really be free. But it really is. It's all a gift with no demand of gratitude attached. Instead, what happens is that when we understand that, the moral universe turns inside out, upside down, and backwards. The moral universe is not one of demand. It's not one of obligation. But instead, the moral universe becomes one of freedom. That gifts surround us. Gifts are everywhere. That if we are in a position where we can be a benefactor, that our obligation is to never hold anyone in debt. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. We are supposed to give and give freely as God has given to us. Benefact away and never expect a thank you note. And when we are on the side of receiving gifts, we are free. That we are under no obligation to return a gift to the benefactor. That circle of obligation has been broken by the moral vision of gratitude in the Bible. That circle of obligation, that reciprocal thing, the transaction, that's Caesar, not Jesus. Instead, we are given gifts, and our response should be to give more away. We don't return back to the benefactor. Instead, send gifts further out around the table. Not out of obligation, but out of joy. And that's what moral gratitude is about. Moral gratitude is about living in a system, an ethical vision of the universe that places gifts at the center, but gifts that are freed from debt and obligation. Just gifts. That was the vision of the garden. Adam and Eve, they were just put there with all those gifts. And it wasn't a requirement that they do anything with it. God said, take care of it. Produce. Have fun. Multiply the gifts. Spread them around. You're going to have kids. Share. There's going to be more people here. And that's what it is. That is the morality of gratitude. We live in a universe of gifts. The circle of reciprocal obligation is broken. But the circle of the table is ever present. And our job is to keep pulling up chairs and making sure that everybody has something to eat. So this year, I don't feel particularly grateful because so many things have gone wrong. It's been hard. I felt lonely. I know you have too. We've been frightened. Would we even make it through the year? Will people we know die of COVID? What was going to happen with the election? What's going to happen with our jobs? I mean, I'm in the same kind of boat every one of you is in. I haven't felt grateful very much. It's been hard, sad. I've cried every day since March. But you know what? We're part of this other thing. This other radical, amazing thing. Where we, as the people of God, are literally taken out away from a universe of gratitude indebtedness, of an immoral form of gratitude that demands our loyalty, that demands our obligations. And instead, we have been translated into this other universe, into a completely different moral world, a world where we are freed from debt and we free others from debt. And our job is just keep passing on the gifts. And that has sustained me. It sustains me as I engage in political action. It sustains me as I think about justice. It sustains me in what I imagine to be the vision of the kingdom that is one day closer than it was yesterday. It thrills me that we live in this subversive vision of gratitude, one where gifts are free. Every lunch is free. Where we know that the systems and structures of this world are passing, and that there truly is an age to come that is breaking in. Next week is the first Sunday of Advent. And those 4 Sundays are about just that. Listen for it. The birth is about to happen. The kingdom is coming. The table is being set. You might not feel it, but you can still do it. A blessed Thanksgiving to you all, and live into the subversive power of gratitude.
Come all proud, come all greedy, come all liars, come all shamed, come all wealthy, come receive it. To the table come today. Come all broken, come all needy, come all poor and come enslaved, come all rulers, come be seated, come all sinners, come all saints, come to the table from near and far. Come from the shadows, come out of the dark. There's room at the table. We saved you a seat. Come to the banquet. Come join in the feast. Every race and every nation, come all rebels, come all gay, come beloved, come to Jesus, to a table full of grace, to the table come and stay, come to the table. Just come as you are. Come be whole. Come be loved. Come accepted. Come now, come. Come be whole. Be loved, come accepted, come now, come be whole, come be loved, come accepted. Your mission to fill every seat. Go live out your mission to fill every seat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bass, for that incredible message. And thank you to everyone for joining us today, for the creative arts team who puts together this music and the art. And thank you for everyone who makes hospitality. And there's so many pieces of this, and it's all because of you. So thank you for being a part of this virtual experience. Josh wanted to make sure that everyone knew that beginning December 6th, there will be a new Hebrew Bible study beginning via Zoom. He's excited about it. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll have more details soon. And before you go, we just want to remind you that you are a beloved child of God. We're so glad that you are a part of this community. Even if today is your first time, welcome home. We are all together in this. We are all beloved children. We are all beautiful, unique expressions of the divine creativity. So as you go about your week, remember that. Just meditate on that a little bit. Grace and peace be with you.